Namaste and welcome to another episode of Atharva Forum. This time, Atharva Forum brings you a series on the left and the right. And the first episode is about woke culture or cultural wokeism. Before I invite our guest today, Aravindanji, let me start with a brief origin of the left and the right. Not the idea or the ideology, but the labels. The split of the political spectrum came from the French Revolution way back in the year 1789 with Louis XVI being the King of France. The main event associated with the French Revolution is the storming of the Bastille, when commoners stormed the fortress, which, along with other events, culminated in the establishment of constitutional monarchy. While that may sound odd for us who are more used to constitutional democracy, constitutional monarchy allowed a monarch, a king, to be the head of the state, subject to a constitution. In the assembly that convened after the French Revolution, there was a raging debate whether the king should have curtailed powers or absolute powers. The revolutionaries who were seated to the left of the president of the assembly, and the aristocrats were seated to the right of the president, and that is how we got the left and the right in their original context. However, the context has changed over the years, and the one event that really mattered was the one in 1848, when the Communist Manifesto was published by Marx and Engels. And the rise of communism solidified the leftist ideology into something more concrete. And around that time, it became left wing and right wing. The right got associated with a host of ideologies, but one aspect that hardly changed over time was that left wanted change, whereas the right resisted change. With that short introduction, let me welcome our guest today. Namaste, Aravindanji. It's always a pleasure to converse with you. And today, we would like to start with your views on the left and the right, especially their historical context and how they have evolved over the years to their present day ideologies.
Bhavesh, essentially, the difference between the right and the left can even be traced back, actually. I would say that let us take an archetype approach to this. Then you can see that in the Christian gospel, during the final days, the bad people are sent to the left-hand side of God and the good people are sent to the right-hand side of God during the last judgment. Okay, so is it, in a way, it is very interesting that we are seeing a continuation of the same thing when here, whom the Christian theology would consider as kind of antagonistic to the Christian theology, they would be seated on the left and the others would be seated on the right. But nevertheless, over the period of time, as the Enlightenment was taking over, Enlightenment and the secularization of European West was taking over, more and more the left started having power. The left started dictating how the civilization would progress for the West. That started happening. So what was happening was the right as a conservative force would make sure that the society would remain in a kind of an order. And the left as the radical force would always infuse the society with the socialist ideas and also some new radical ideas that would fine-tune the society. That way, they were becoming complementary slowly till the Marxism came. When Marxism came, they said that all this is not going to work properly, that we have to have a very clear ideological pathway for the left. The left cannot be, in some way or other, the servant of the right. In fact, the left could be the servant of the right. That is how it was happening in the West. Then the Marxism comes and it says, let us take left to an absolute path. Let us go that way. And so there is a kind of a divide, an irreversible divide between the old style socialists and the Marxists. Both are leftists. But the Marxists said, here is this ideological path. Through this path, you can really bring genuine left change in the society. Whereas you people, you are being petit bourgeois. You are just playing to the needs of ultimately the bourgeois society. So this kind of a divide was happening. And now we have to see what is relevant to us as Indians. Here, you will find that during the formative ages of Indian nationalist freedom movement, particularly when you look at the time of Madam Gama and Veer Savarkar, that time, 1910 around, you will find that the World Socialist Forum, they were kind of international socialist organizations were kind of poised positively towards Indian freedom. They gave the space where the Indian freedom fighters and revolutionaries could work and they could have their own agenda. They didn't dictate. This is the very important difference. They didn't dictate. The Western socialists, the Western leftists, they didn't dictate terms to Indian revolutionary freedom fighters. But, and to a particular point, the Indian revolutionaries reciprocated the whole thing. So Veer Savarkar points out that in the India House, Lenin was kept safely away from the hunting that was happening to him by the secret intelligence bureau and all this. So at that time, Savarkar actually asks Lenin, what is the blueprint you have for a socialist government? And Lenin smiles and says, blueprint? You don't have any blueprint. Let us have the power and after that we will think about the blueprint. That is what he says. But actually, the Marxist left has an idea, has a vision, has an ideology, importantly. And it is able to subsume reality to that ideology. So when Lenin gathers power, becomes the head of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics after 1917 October coup, you will find that there is a shift. Then you find that the Indian radicals at that time, particularly Islamist radicals, who were for kind of a jihad, they were the ones who were going and meeting Lenin. And Lenin, very smoothly, he talks to them. And they become instrumental in creating Communist Party of India. It is the Islamists who become instrumental in creating Communist Party of India. The other Marxist, Yaman Roy, he becomes very much a fanboy of monotheist religions. The most trident to the monotheism is more advanced it is in terms of social evolution. So you see here a difference. The left that was not dictating cultural terms before there was Marxist influence, that suddenly becomes a force that dictates specific cultural aspects and says these aspects of your society are backward and these aspects of your society are good and you have to behave like this. So this is an important aspect that happens in the evolution of the left. Now we will as we explore cultural Wokism, we will move further and we will see how, despite all this, now the Western right has been able to co-opt the modern radical left.
In fact, it's very interesting to know about the pre-French Revolution, the Christian origins of the left and the right. And, the right has been also more fluid, more diverse, so to speak, than the left. The right has been characterized by anything from monarchy, nationalism, conservatism, traditionalism, libertarianism, and so on. And in a way, this is not surprising because, like you also said, the left over the years has been about breaking social hierarchies, looking at the pursuit of social equality, at least from an ideological perspective. And the right considers social hierarchies or social structures as inherent and inevitable. And this obviously leads to a jumble of ideologies that sort of gets grouped as right. In the US, for example, and we'll talk a little more about that, but the right would be associated with the church and the influence the church has on the policies of the government. And we, in fact, discussed this at length during our previous conversation on the US CIRF. And in India, the right is rather a vague label today, which came into prominence, I would say, very recently, although it has been in use since some time. And today, in India, it includes anyone who is not a left. So, we'll come to this deeper interpretation of the left and the right. But even if we look at the loose context, we are seeing an increased, I would say, an aggressive rise of the right in the global arena. And I would like to ask what you think is the reason for this, and also I have a related question, because we are talking now about the current day scenarios. How much role do you think social media has played in the rise of the right? And I am asking this specifically from the viewpoint of two different events. The first is, the role of social media in Modi ji becoming a PM in 2014, and more recently, the role of social media in ousting Trump in 2020. So, your views on the rise of the right and the role of social media?
The rise of the right is essentially an illusion. I have to say that. It's an illusion. It is a kind of, see, the right, the so-called right, if you take the US politics, you will find that the right is associated with the Republicans and the left is associated with the Democrats. Just go over to the time of the Civil War and you will find some very interesting, different kind of relations there. Abraham Lincoln was actually a Republican. He was not a Democrat, right? So there are these interesting developments, and it was Republican Lyndon Johnson who actually was instrumental in implementing a lot of laws that ended segregation in United States. And compared to Lyndon Johnson, I would say that Lyndon Johnson was considered, even within the Democrats, Lyndon Johnson was considered as more conservative, whereas Kennedy was considered as very radical. But the inside dynamics show that Kennedy was okay with the fashionable statements, whereas it was Lyndon Johnson who was creating the actual differences. And he was getting the help of the conservative. He was able to talk to the conservatives, and those kind of things were happening. Now coming to the modern times, in 2014, we're talking about Narendra Modi. See, and social media, the role of social media. The point here is, in India, somehow this right-left distinctions in the global level kind of disintegrate. Very much disintegrate. They disintegrate. So you will find that the global aggressive right wing, it uses the terminology of the left to damn Bharatiya Janata Party and Narendra Modi. Not because they are right wing, but because they are Hindus. That is the most important thing. The ecosystem of Indian, the ecosystem of BJP, what we call Sangh Parivar, you will find that it consists of a lot of left as well as right streams inside it. For example, if you see what Bharatiya Mastu Sangh and Datopan Tengadi, they stood for, that was more what you would call as radical left worldview. Swadesi was essentially a left worldview. It was not exactly a right-wing worldview. And even if you look at Modi and Trump, unfortunately, this comparison had always come up, the Modi and Trump, and I think some of our own people, even at high places, they have allowed that to happen. But if you look at it carefully, you will find something very interesting. Trump was for creating walls. Modi was for creating bridges. Modi was a person who was going and talking to the neighboring countries, and he was talking about creating a collaborative satellite technology for all the people, for Bangladesh, for Bhutan, for Sri Lanka. He was bringing them all together. He was actually creating bridges. He never talked about building walls. Even with Pakistan, he tried all kind of nice things. Samadhana Veda he tried before Tanda of the strategic strikes. He did it all. Whereas in the case of Trump, you will find that he was forthright, typical right-wing throwback into the time. That is one. Number two, another crucial aspect. Take climate change and environmental problems. Where do we stand? Where, where does Narendra Modi stand? Where does BJP stand? There is no climate denial, climate change denial. There is no denial of global warming. We are for renewable energy resources. We have been increasing the renewable energy resources. Everything associated with the so-called left radical politics in United States. In the United States, it is the liberals, the so-called left liberals, who actually want renewable energies, who talk a lot about what you call the climate change. That is what Modi does. So if you look at all these aspects, you will find that this left-right distinction breaks down in India in reality. But in terms of propaganda, that is the most important thing. In terms of propaganda, it is the ivory tower sitting elites who actually are the real conservatives. In the case of India, it is the ivory tower sitting elite, people who have been enjoying all the privileges in the society. Why don't you eat cake if you don't have bread? That kind of attitude people. They are the ones who call themselves left. So I call them crypto right. They are the crypto right people, right wing in India. But they call themselves left, and they amass the global media and they create the narrative against the government, telling that it is right-wing government. And then you can lump in Modi government along with other right-wing government, real right-wing governments, and you demonize the government. But it is actually absolutely a wrong thing, a wrong concept. So what happens in India is this. The real left in the very real quintessential sense of the term, as before the Marxist takeover of the left, the real left. We were talking about egalitarian society, kind of social justice and all that kind of thing. That real left is with BJP or the so-called Sangh Parivar. Think about the schemes that Modi has been launching. Like, for example, the toilet building spree that has been changing the entire landscape. All this, you will find that these are all policies everywhere in the world associated with left, liberal. Yet, the wokeism's triumph is that such a government can be projected as a right-wing government in the global world. That is where we have to look into the wokeism as a specific phenomenon.
The tyranny of labels, so to speak, associated with this whole conversation. And the left and the right get strewn around so carelessly, and I must say mercilessly, in everyday conversation. And I believe that once people identify themselves with a label, the left or the right, or it could be anything, they allow the label to drive their thoughts as well. And labels create an identity for any individual, a sense of belongingness to some really powerful group. And this sort of takes me back to what you mentioned about the European Christian legacy of the left and the right. And I also feel that it creates a dichotomy where actually none may exist. And like you rightly said, there is always this common belief about Indian politics. Mostly this belief has been propped up by the left, but the belief is that there is no right-wing political party in India, and anyone who questions the establishment tends to be termed as right-wing. Which actually, if you look at it deeply, and like you have also mentioned, is just irony. And the left was all about toppling established power structures, but today the left is clinging on to these power structures, whether it is publishing houses, mainstream media, academia, entertainment industry, and even social media. We have seen social media being fairly neutral, when it started out, but today we are seeing the impact of the leftist policies in pretty much all social media companies. So the left, in fact, seems to have taken over the role of aristocracy of the French Revolution, clinging on to power. And the right has been struggling to topple these power structures, if that is how we have to define it. And the left behaves exactly what they were fighting against, an entrenched monopoly of power. And just that the power structures are no longer the same. They are not the monarchy, they are not the nobility or the clergy, but the closed, influential, and rather a vindictive network of people who control access to information today. And the left continues to parrot the old tropes, which in India would be, as you rightly said, it's all about Hinduism, right? So their usual phrases such as Brahminical patriarchy, Hindu nationalism, the caste structure, minority persecution. It's rather something which keeps them distracted and occupied. And hopefully, if these tropes could induce at least some guilt in some fence sitters, then why not? And the right sort of gets itself entangled into the web of labels that are perpetuated by the left, and that sort of creates a convenient target. And I also believe what happens is the labels come with their own baggage of European politics and Christian religion, and they tend to be used in a very nefarious way, and which is why even derivative labels like the Indian right wing or the Hindu right wing, I would say, do not make much sense, because they still do not let go that original context. If the left considers the right in the US as propagating religious extremism, just as an example, then it would apply the same equivalence to the Hindus in India. So whatever the Hindus do in India tends to be labeled as religious extremism. It could be like what we are talking about, our temples, rebuilding our temples, tends to be associated with right-wing extremism. So in this context, before we get into the cultural wokeism part, but just to have closure on the right and the left, I would just like to ask two questions. One is, you have mentioned that the left and the right are not really the right ways to describe Indian polity. But do you see these labels muddying the political discourse in our country? So that's the first part. The second part is that, do you still think that there has to be some sort of a concrete definition of what constitutes the right in India? Because today I believe that it is a very loosely defined term. It sort of toes the line of the right traditionally being a reactive wing rather than a proactive wing. In the larger context, would you view this sort of reactive wing as a political, intellectual, and a cultural movement, or do you think there is a need for this reactive wing? The right wing is what I am talking about, to define itself clearly first, before really getting on to other aspects.
When we talk about the right wing in India, okay, the perfect truth is that there is no such thing as a right wing. What right wing we are talking about? That is the next question. Cultural right wing or economic right wing? Okay, social right wing. Which right wing we are talking about? A person can be in India today, call himself, I am a cultural left wing and an economic right wing. Right? There are many people like that actually. I don't want to tell the names, but there are a lot of people who say that I am a cultural left wing and I am an economic right wing. It gives a lot of leverage to move here and there in between the camps, depending upon which camp is on the ascendancy. Right? So the point that we have to stress again and again and again is that here we have to make dharma as the basis. Okay. So when we make dharma as the basis, then dharma is not belief. Dharma is not a theology. Dharma is not dogma. And hence, it is flexible, it is dynamic, it is pluralist in its own way. Dharma itself is pluralist in its own way. So when you are creating a politics that emerges from Dharma, that evolves from Dharma, then what happens is these labels just wither away. They become absolutely meaningless. That is exactly what is happening here. Now, if you look at India's freedom movement, for example, you will find this labeling started then there itself. Nehru was characterizing Hindu Mahasabha again and again as feudal, because Hindu Mahasabha was supported by the Maharajas. And now you, educated Indian, has a view of these Maharajas as ideal persons sitting there enjoying dances and hanging on to their hookah, never caring about the people. Look at the actual data, you will find that the Maharaja Samasthanas were actually better in terms of human resource index when compared to the British directly administered provinces. Even when famines were raging in nearby Tamil Nadu, Travancore was sort of kept safe. People used to come from Tamil Nadu, British administered Tamil Nadu, to the king administered Travancore and they used to escape these famines. So a lot of things can be said. Kings, for example, the Baroda king, he was the one who created the Bank of Baroda, and he was the one who created, in fact, a lot of movements for social changes and social justice. Yet, this Nehruvian way of history had always been accusing these people of feudal. And then the Hindu Mahasabha is feudal. Hindu Mahasabha was not feudal. Hindu Mahasabha was as progressive as, in fact, at times they are more progressive than Congress. It was more democratic than Congress, to a fault. It was more democratic than Congress. In the case of Congress, you will find that they use the term high command, party high command. It is a military term. From when onwards this particular term entered the Congress vocabulary? It was during the time of Mahatma Gandhi, this term entered, party high command. What the party high command says, you will have to obey. In the case of, go through the annals of records of Hindu Mahasabha, people could debate with the Savarkar. Savarkar used to even sulk when people didn't listen to him. He would allow them. So he was democratic. But yet, in the overall impression, Hindu Mahasabha was feudal, Hindu Mahasabha was backward, whereas Congress was progressive, Congress was democratic. So these impressions can easily be, you can create these impressions and you can play with them. But ultimately, the people will be the ones who will be suffering because of this. Okay. And it continues into free India. And if you look, you will find that the left in India was shamelessly pro-Soviet. What the Soviet Union would ask the left to do. But take the case of Jensen. Was it pro-US? When there was Vietnam conflict, Jensen didn't support US. Whereas when there is Chinese aggression in India, the left supported China. See the difference. So this left-right divide that exists in United States and the terms of the political sciences get created through this left-right divide, particularly during the Cold War also, they are getting used, they are getting imported here. It is exactly like this. See, when you have third-rate weapons, you export them all to these developing countries. You are getting rid of the weapons and you are also getting money. The same way you have got a lot of outdated terminologies, you just export them to countries like India. And our social science institutions, again dominated by the left, are more than happy to accept them. Think about it. Dharampal was completely sidelined in the left curriculum. The left curriculum of India. Was Dharampal right-wing? Was Dharampal a revisionist historian? No. In the US, a revisionist historian is a person who would support slavery and say that slavery is good. Whereas you take the case of Dharampal, was he saying colonialism is good? He was not saying that. So Dharampal becomes a revisionist historian for them. How can that happen? Dharampal comes actually, if you take the deeper Gandhian worldview, Dharampal comes from there. You cannot label him as right-wing, but left made sure that Dharampal was sidelined, marginalized. So if you look at the way the left, the so-called left has functioned in India, it was just using those labels. And it was creating, as you rightly said, they were muddying the entire discourse here, because of which at times we ourselves fall into self-hypnosis. It's a very dangerous thing. They do this collective brainwashing of India. And remember, the Indian journalists, the entire Indian journalist system, almost to its core, they were penetrated by KGB. And today you have journalists who have come from that lineage, either directly, the daughters and sons of the previous media Marxist barons. They have come. Only in India you have this Marxist media bourgeois. You have that in India. I don't want to tell the name, but let us say there is a there is a newspaper called Mount Road Mavo. Okay. That newspaper, that media house entirely as an elitist house. Perfectly elitist. Ordinary persons cannot enter it. Only a particular type of persons can enter that. But it would be parroting the lines of China. Why? Because previously they had sold themselves out to Soviet Union. After the collapse of Soviet Union, now they have to sell themselves out somewhere. So they have been selling them out right and left to United States academia and also to United States media and also to China. And these are the people who decide the narrative. So this is what has been happening.
Thank you, Aravindanji. It's always interesting to listen to the impact that the labels, the left and the right, have created over the years in India. And certainly, I think the dharma as the basis of what needs to be done is something that we all need to look at. And we will have more conversations about the left and the right in other episodes of this series, which would touch upon areas such as education, economics, arts and culture, and so on. And today we will shift our focus on the topic at hand, which is cultural wokeism. First, let me give some background of the word woke. And you search for its meaning on the web, chances are that you would come across something that sounds like this. A woke is someone who is aware and well informed, usually about issues of racial discrimination and social inequality. Woke as a word was added to the Oxford English Dictionary in 2017 with a similar meaning. If you, as a part of the audience, actually know what the word means, then you would be surprised at this rather positive definition that still exists. So, but interestingly, the history of the word itself is quite old. It is intertwined with the history of African Americans in the US. And the phrase "stay woke" was used way back in the 1930s. After that, it appeared sporadically here and there in a few songs and articles. And in 2014, the phrase was popularized by Black Lives Matter activists, and later woke found its way into internet memes, mostly to support the BLM movement. From racial discrimination, woke came to refer to other issues broadly associated with left liberal ideas, such as social justice, minority rights, gender identity, sexual orientation, and environmental activism. By the year 2020, woke took on a rather derisive meaning, largely because of the political right in the US, and came to denote anyone who went overboard with issues that they were purportedly fighting for. In a span of less than a decade, woke went from a positive word denoting anyone who was awake or aware of social issues to a pejorative word denoting anyone who was just doing moral grandstanding on such issues. And the evolution is also a good example of how fast social media acts as a catalyst in defining, redefining, and even recontextualizing trends. So, Aravindanji, what are your views on the woke culture, especially its evolution in the last few years?
See, we have to see it like something like a very concerted effort to attack Trump regime. They never expected Trump to come. But when Trump came, and you have to remember that Trump is a man with a deeply problematic personality. That is a different thing. Okay. So in no way we can be seen as being sympathetic to Trump or anyone. But the way the present US administration is handling Taliban, perhaps even a Trump critic like me may start becoming an admirer of Trump. I don't know. Okay, right now things are like that. But the point I want to say here is this, that at that time, the entire Democrat system, they tried to use this woke aspect as a kind of a, you can say, a kind of a rebellion against Trump in a way the United States polity has never seen. The George Floyd thing came in handy. Okay, that is at the very local level. But we have to look at this woke in a very different, very dangerous way. The dangerous thing is because look at Black Lives Matter. I find one very, very interesting, curious, very disturbing thing about BLM is that they never talk about things actually that matter. I have been waiting all my life, okay, since I came to know about a particular thing. I have been waiting to see some black organization to take up that particular aspect. It is the Tuskegee experiment. Tuskegee experiment was an experiment that the United States government's top medical agencies conducted on black population from 1932 to 1972, which was because of a whistleblower who exposed it that it was stopped. The black males, they wanted to test on black males how syphilis affects them. But they told them that they were giving medicines, but they were not giving medicines, just they were giving distilled water and some vitamin C tablets, and they were just watching. These people were thinking that they were getting cured, and they were going and they were trying to have children and all that kind of thing, and it was destroying families. And this happened from 1932 to 1972. Think about it. How many of the people talk about it? Later, Clinton made a, I am sorry, I apologize. He gave some money to the people who were affected and all that. But the moral responsibility. How many people went to jail because of this? The persons who planned it. Why a BLM is not asking about that? Why there are no demonstrations before White House regarding this Tuskegee experiment, which is more important? And during the Honduras rebels' time, CIA was actually marketing drugs in the black people area where black people dominate. CIA was allowing drugs to be sold in where black youths were majority. So this kind of things have been done by the United States. And these are the systemic things. How you escape from all this? You make the blacks tell some fashionable statements, and the whites will also join and they will also tell these fashionable statements. When you tell these fashionable statements, you feel happy. You have done your job. I can go back to my elitist safety of the campus. I can design perhaps more Tuskegee experiment. We don't know how many experiments are running right now into the black communities in the United States. The very same persons who are mounting these woke statements can go back and they could design these experiments. So this woke, this is the problem I find. See, when you are taking a very real serious problem, black lives should matter. And in the United States establishment, black lives have never mattered. That is a fact. But BLM helps to create a sense of getting justice while no justice has been given. That is the danger. That is the problem. You can have beautiful, wonderful seminars. You can fly across continents and have seminars on racial equality. And you can make all kinds of woke statements in Scientific American and other wonderful magazines. But you do all that so that you will never be accountable for a perverted, inhuman experiment like the Tuskegee experiment. That is the problem I see. Just think about it. That is, I want to emphasize this because nobody talks about it despite the fact that it is there in the open. Nobody talks about it. If you are talking about woke and if you are silent about Tuskegee experiment, then you are actually a person who is a traitor to that cause that you are making people to think that you are. The cause is right. That is what is very important here. The cause is right. But the people who are taking this up and making a joke of it by these woke movements, that is the real tragedy. That is the real tragedy.
Maybe look at the impact of the woke culture in the West. You talked about the Black Lives Matter and how they've not even focusing on the real issues. I would like to stay in the US for some time, discussing about what the impact is before we move on to India. And it's certainly, for the audience in the rest of our conversation, we use woke to mean its context used today, which is sort of a pernicious moral grandstanding and not what you would see in the dictionary definition if you go online. And the phrase that I would say is most associated with the impact of woke culture today is cancel culture. And again, for the audience, if you're not on social media, you may not have heard of the term cancel culture. But basically, cancel culture is depriving someone of their livelihood, position, stature, or influence because they do not conform to a woke standard of a society. An employee can be cancelled, or in other words, fired, because he shares his views about, say, a minority religion that wokes do not endorse. An actress can be cancelled, or in other words, kicked out of a movie because she commented something that wokes do not believe in. A corporate house can be cancelled, or in other words, boycotted because it sells products that wokes think or against the idea of social justice. An author who is long dead can be cancelled as well because she wrote something that cannot be accepted by today's more liberal standards. So anyone from Newton to Blyton, Rowling, Doyle gets cancelled because they did something based on the zeitgeist of the day. Whenever I hear the word cancel culture, I am reminded of a character called Popatlal from the popular series Tarak Mehta Ka Ulta Chashma, who insists on cancelling events and programs the moment there is a small glitch. That's just on a lighter side, but I feel that the reason cancel culture works is because those in power tend to be inclined to a more liberal, more progressive view. And if I have to put it bluntly, it's all about where money is. In the name of social justice, therefore, corporate houses, publishers, educational institutions, social media giants, and even left liberal governments tend to get into this woke culture bandwagon. In the US, for example, this has resulted in polarization of identity politics, convoluted handling of certain races and religions, watering down of education, corporate messiahdom, so to speak, rampant individualism. And the worst part is that the impact of woke culture seems to be just starting. And the impact has ranged from downright loopy to downright sinister. And Aravindanji, you mentioned that as well. That there is a sinister side to it. So again, we will come to woke culture in India shortly. But before that, Aravindanji, what are your views on the impact? You talked about BLM to an extent, but would you also share some of the other impacts that woke culture has had in the US and in the Western world in general?
Here we have to be very, very nuanced, unfortunately. See, after the Second World War, we all saw what hatred can do to people. Sustained hatred of Christian anti-Semitism. What it did to the Jews, it shook the Western civilization. So, at the same time, there evolved certain things. For example, Holocaust denial. And very rightly, if you are a Holocaust denying person, then you would not be given a platform. If you are going to peddle protocols of the elders of Zion, then you would not be allowed to talk in an educational institution. So this is because these contain some of the worst hatred that the West had generated. And so the West was feeling sorry about it. So that happened after the Second World War. That is on one side. Keep that on one side. On the other side, the anti-Semitism was still there. It just needed an opportunity, and the opportunity was given by the Palestinian issue. So when the Palestinian issue came, the West, it could channelize its anti-Semitism into this Palestinian rights movement, and they created boycott Israel movement. You won't go and attend meetings in Israel. You won't go and attend seminars in Israel. You won't play with the players of Israel, Israeli players. Those kind of things they created. They created in almost every campus. Left played a very big role in this. A very big role in this. So you have the right that has been the cranky right that has been wanting to do Holocaust denial, that has been creating stories about this Jewish conspiracies and stuff. On the other hand, you have this left, the left that wants to boycott Israel and bring back anti-Semitism through the back door of Palestinian rights. So here is a converging point for the loony right and the radical left, which is anti-Semitism. And from where does anti-Semitism come? It comes from Christian theology, right? So here is one aspect that you have to see that would later become an pandemic of cancel culture. Okay, in this, one thing was right, one thing was genuine. When you tell you are a Holocaust denier, when you tell that you believe in protocols of the elders of Zion, you should not be allowed to come and teach children, because what you are bringing is nascent hatred, absolute hatred. So there it is understandable. If you say that you are a creationist and you are coming and you are trying to teach biology to the students, the university is absolutely right to say that no, you are not allowed here because creationism is pseudoscience. But when you take this to the extreme, left saw this. This was genuine, and left started, the radical left started using this, and radical Islamic elements also started using this in the context of the blacks. So see, the woke culture, cancel culture, see how easy it is to fool the blacks through cancel culture. Not only blacks, people who believe in genuine principles of justice. Hereafter, I won't use the term blackmail. I will only use the term whitemail, because blackmail actually means making black associated with something bad. So I won't use the term blackmail. I will use the term only whitemail. Okay, I can say this. I become a woke, and then I can go and I can work. I can design an experiment that would test biological weapons on black community. Nobody would suspect me, right? So this is the sinister aspect of this woke culture. You can do this outside. It's a very small thing. You don't lose anything. You don't lose anything at all, right? You can cancel some seminars. You can target certain persons and you can have revenge on them. It's all funny, very good, nice games. But inside, the system will not change. This will make sure that you don't even go near the system and do a systemic change for securing the justice about which you are concerned. In other words, let me put it this way: culture and cancel culture, they are the opiate that the liberals are giving to people who are really concerned with justice. That is what we have to understand. That is why they are dangerous. Ultimately, it will harm science. You would have heard of Michael Shermer. Michael Shermer definitely belongs to the liberal side. He had been working on Skeptical Inquirer. He had been debunking all kinds of pseudosciences. He is not in the least racist, but he is concerned. He is anti-Trump. Yet he is so much concerned about this woke culture, because this ultimately, taken to ridiculous heights, will harm science and will generate pseudoscience. One day you will start telling that a mathematical theorem, because it is having lesser number of coefficients in the right hand side and more number of coefficients in the left hand side, is about inequality. So you have to make mathematics woke. Think about it. Woke can be played in many different ways. That is why we have to be very careful about. Then there is again also a Christian dimension to it. We have to understand that very carefully, because Christianity has the institutional Christianity, the Christian institutions. They have become fabulously rich and powerful because of colonialism and also because of anti-Semitism. Nobody benefited from, I could dare say, personally, this is what I feel, nobody benefited more financially from fascist regimes and Nazi regimes than the church. The church was actually running even rat lines, getting for a hefty amount of money, getting Nazi criminals, get new identities and get resettled in Argentina. Okay, so they were doing all this. At the same time, they had to hide all this from the people. And they also wanted to hit at their enemies. Like, for example, the case of the Hindu Sangathan movement. The Hindu Sangathan movement is a problematic thing for the church. They are creating barriers for conversions, for their proselytizing. So they would take this woke ideology, these woke terms and cancel terms, and they would allow their leftist puppets to scream these things. But their own empire would have been built on this injustice, that they would never make the gaze turn inward for them. So this woke will always be, the cancel terms and the woke terms will always be terms that the system throws outside, not inside. That is where the sinister plan is.
Aravindanji, it is always fascinating to listen to you about the historical aspects of all of these, and the more I listen to you, what I find sinister is not just the impact we are talking about, but woke as a label also seems to be getting constrained into something which we may find as ridiculous rather than sinister. I would like to shift the focus to cultural wokeism in India. And we may still consider the spread of woke culture in India as maybe a fringe or an urban response. But this is just one part of it. And we may not specifically call it as woke culture, but there is an increased social messaging that we see today on web series, movies, advertisements, podcasts, opinion pieces, and even school syllabus for that matter. They are all signaling a definite shift towards injecting a more liberal worldview on viewers and on consumers. And while this in itself may be considered as being just politically incorrect, inevitably such messaging in India means targeting the Hindu culture. And you have brought that point as well earlier. And in a very traditional sense, for the left liberal establishment, the Hindu culture represents the entrenched power structure that needs to be toppled. Whether Tanishq, Unilever, Airtel, or Parle, the target remains the same: Hindus and particularly Hindu children. The message also doesn't change. The onus of religious harmony lies with the Hindus. The onus of caring for the environment lies with the Hindus, and the onus for tolerance lies with the Hindus. So we are also neither immune nor far away from the relentless, from the tentacles of woke culture, I would say, with an increasing urban population which is proud of being rootless, an onslaught of American culture through its corporate world, whether social media, entertainment houses, MNCs, and a stridently influential left liberal ecosystem. This is an ideal combination for woke culture to proliferate. And the question, Aravindanji, is, what do you see as the impact of woke culture in India?
Bhaveshji, with respect to woke culture, we could even say that we are the pioneers. They came later, okay. The woke culture in India originally was actually created with inputs from the British and the evangelical system. Right? Ramayana should be seen as a racial narrative. So the Dravidians are considered either as demons or as monkeys. So you should not accept Ramayana. Let us create our own Kimayana. They created it, They created Ravana Kavya. Okay. And then they included it in the syllabus. In the case of Ramayana, they couldn't do away with Ramayana because Kamba Ramayana is it is the height of Tamil culture, Kamba Ramayana. Okay, so they couldn't do away with it. So what they did was, instead, they made only those parts of Kamba Ramayana where, for example, Vali would be blaming Rama. That part would be taken and will be given. Or Kumbhakarna would be talking about not going to Rama when Vibhishana comes and asks him. That part would be taken and put as Kamba Ramayana. So they created this atmosphere where you would see your own culture as oppressive, your own culture as alien, and then you would become woke to your own culture. And when you become woke to your own culture, in let us say 1940, what you would do, you would petition the British not to leave India. So actually here you have a perfect example of, with the woke culture, what the real exploiters can do. You have a British government which has been ruthlessly exploiting the natural resources and the humans in India, making them indentured laborers throughout the world. But the woke culture would make the educated elite Indians hate their own culture and ask the British government to continue. It happened in Tamil Nadu. Right? The Justice Party, the DMK's preliminary people, they went and petitioned British in 1947. You can leave the rest of India, but don't leave us. We want to be under your rule. That is what the woke culture did. These are the people who are continuing the woke culture now, here in India. Right. In the case of India, the woke culture is nothing but the racial colonial policies. See? For example, in JNU, they tell that Durga is actually an Aryan agent. I don't want to use the exact words they have been using. I don't want to use it. Right? Against, she was sent to seduce and kill the Dravidian native tribal chieftains. Right? Now, if a colonialist says this, you can understand. If an evangelist says this, you can understand. It is wrong, it is stupid, it is perverted, but you can understand why he is saying it. What is the purpose? What was the purpose of JNU? JNU was created to do a lot of social science studies, particularly from post-colonial perspective. And what is JNU people doing there? They were peddling the very colonial hate propaganda. Colonial propaganda of prejudice, hate, and stereotypes about Indian culture in the name of post-colonial studies. To give a parallel, let us say we are creating an institute to study the latest astronomical phenomenon like quasars, black holes. And there the students conduct a seminar on ancient aliens theory of Eric von Däniken. How much outrage that would create. That is exactly the outrage that should have been created here. That the students who are sucking up the resources of the nation to study the post-colonial studies are peddling the colonial stupidity that even the colonialists wouldn't touch with the left hand. Right? So that is happening here in the name of woke culture. And when this happens, who is getting benefited? The same forces that exploited India, the same forces that today want to break India, they get benefited. China gets benefited. Right? So this has been happening in the name of woke culture in India. And because of that, what has happened is that, for example, in Tamil Nadu, it is customary to invoke divine before you start any venture in India. And even the Dravidian movement parties had not tampered with that particular aspect. We have wonderful Bhakti literature songs. Today, now, in the name of this woke culture, that particular aspect has been removed. Okay. So, this is destroying the cultural literacy of India. And once the cultural literacy of India is destroyed completely, once you have a rootless generation of people, those people can be used as cheap labor. They can be easily manipulated. Only when you are rooted, you cannot be easily manipulated. Once you are uprooted, you can be easily manipulated. And that is what is happening right now in India.
Ravindraji, I still remember I think it was in 11th or 12th standard Tamil, the episode of Vali and Rama. But it was years later that I questioned, what would be the reason behind selecting that kind of an episode. So it is great to hear your views on that and, expanding about the woke culture being prevalent in India much, much earlier. And as a final part of the conversation, Aravindanji, I would like to ask about how to address this menace, so to speak. And when we are faced with this onslaught from all directions, what exactly helps? Do we look at, for example, more close-knit local communities, such as what we have traditionally around temples? Do we look at a better role of family, for example, in creating cultural rootedness? Because you also talked about the importance of being rooted. Or do we educate people who work on the ground about tackling a menace like this? And one important point also I want to ask is: does the government have any role to play at all, in addressing these kind of views? So what are your views on the way out?
See, there are a whole range of things that we have to do, and we can keep the government safely out. Okay, because the role of government is coming to an end in this kind of aspects in many places. Okay, a government coming and interfering is exactly what these people expect, and we should not give to these people what they actually expect from us. They expect a particular kind of behavior. They are provoking us for that. And when we respond for that with this kind of behavior they're expecting, and that is a natural reaction that you would have most probably. Okay, so when you are being told, you are again and again, you are told that you belong to Brahmin patriarchy, Brahminical patriarchy. At one point, you feel like telling, yeah, so what? Then they will catch that particular aspect, that yeah, so what? They will catch that, and then they will build upon it, and you would have fallen into their tricks, into their game. And then they would easily beat you in that game because they know that particular game. So you have to actually think about different things. Let me illustrate this with a particular example. But even they are suffering, okay, they are fighting. The perception battles are important. So it not only matters that you are a good person, you have to also, you should be perceived as a good person. Okay, so think about this. RSS runs the maximum number of educational institutions for the underprivileged. Okay, RSS runs the maximum number of healthcare units for all people. Okay, so Vidya Bharati and Seva Bharati are the kind of networks that you can see nowhere. And whom they are serving? They are not serving the rich and the fabulous. They are serving the poor, marginalized, the downtrodden sections of the society. But who are the people who project themselves as speaking for the downtrodden sections of the society? Sitaram Yechuri, NDTV anchor persons, who never leave the comfort of their AC rooms. They are the people who project themselves as speaking for because they have mastered the jargon. Nothing else. They have mastered the jargon. They can just categorize you and put you in a pigeonhole. RSS, right-wing, reactionaries, and patriarchal, misogynist, nationalist, chauvinist. The pigeonhole is ready for you in their jargon. They'll put you in that. And once they put you in that, they think that the problem is over. Okay, as you rightly said, it is the tyranny of labels. And they know that the tyranny of labels is the worst tyranny and the most efficient tyranny. So they work with that. So what do we do? Okay. The answer that I would say may not be agreeable to a lot of persons. Okay. Surprise them. Surprise them. Right. So it is in this context that a person has to see what Mohan Bhagwat said about the DNA. Okay. For example, can you imagine a Nazi? Can you imagine a white supremacist talking about the Germans and the Jews sharing the same DNA, the blacks and the whites sharing the same DNA? Impossible, right? In the perception battles they are fighting against us, they are putting us along with the Ku Klux Klan. They are putting us along with the Nazis. So Triple K and Nazis are the image they are putting on you. This statement blunts that, completely destroys that. right? Unfortunately, the instant gratification people get in the social media, and by, you have read a bit of Sitaram Goel, you have read a bit of Coenra Dust, and you find you are a, intellectual warrior. And then you come and blast Mohan Bhagwat. What you are doing actually is you are providing data to the people who are fighting that woke battles against us. We have to understand that very clearly. I am not talking about appeasement. I am talking about the perception battle. And in this perception battle, this particular statement is a master stroke. Right? Even talking this is actually, in a way, reduces the capacity of that statement. But because already the statement has been talked, attacked, and all that kind of things, I'm telling you. This is one example. But this is not the only method. This is not the only method. What we have to do is, we have to inverse the whole thing. Okay, we have to point out. All we have to do is go for objective history and point out that the woke drama that has been going on in India is actually the pseudo-woke. They are the crypto-imperialists. They are the servants of imperialism. We have to show that. How do we show that? By taking data from our own scriptures, by taking data from our own lived-in experience. Did your mother ever tell you to practice untouchability? No. Never. Have you been ever told any particular Puranic story that supports untouchability? No. You are in Tamil Nadu, so you know that. So if you go to Srirangam temple, if you go to the Vishnu temple, you will find the Alvars. So in that Alvar, there is Tirupan Alvar. There is Tirumangai Alvar. Tirumangai Alvar belongs to a particular dominant jati in present-day Tamil Nadu. Tirupan Alvar belongs to what you can call scheduled community. Okay. Now, if a Hindu knows that Tirupan Alvar and Tirumangai Alvar are kept in the same place and worshipped, given the same respect, would he practice caste discrimination? Would he insult a fellow Hindu with caste innuendos? He would never do that. He would never do that. So, these caste problems are existing. Caste injustice is existing, not because of Hinduism, but because of the lack of knowledge about Hinduism. So, it is the people who are preventing the knowledge of Hinduism in our school systems, in our syllabus. They are the people who are against the scheduled communities. They are the people who are actually for caste atrocities, because it is by caste atrocities that they can run their transnational business of the cottage industry of demonizing India. We have to bring this out again and again and again, in whatever forms, in whatever media we have to do it. For that, we have to get out of this right-wing, left-wing obsession. We should not see. Trump makes a statement. The statement actually appeals to, because he is attacking the left liberal journalists. Okay, then what we do is, we like it so much, and we feel that it is very relevant to us, and we start sharing it. Do not get into their fights. Let them fight their fights. Let them have whatever fight they want. Let them fight those fights. We will side only with the justice. We would side with, of course, the racial equality. We will side with that. We will side with anything that is against anti-Semitism. We will side with that. We will be very clear about that. We don't have anything to do with the hate agendas of the left, of the right or the left of the Western persuasion. Because ultimately, they all stem from a closed theology of exclusiveness, of binary identities. So it will always create conflict-oriented models. Whereas we come from a Dharmic civilization, and we always come with harmony-oriented models. We have to present those harmony-oriented models. We have to show them that our culture is better than all this woke culture in securing social justice, because the social justice we talk about comes from our spiritual values. the Sanatana Dharmic values. So if we do that consciously again and again, it is at hard work, particularly given the fact that the social media is like this. It is a loaded platform. All media platforms are loaded platforms. Let us accept that. Let us not go and cry that you are not giving us the space like the previous IT minister did. Let us not do that. Let us tell very clearly that I know you are loaded, but this is my stand.
Thank you, Aravindanji.
I should also thank you so much.
Very clear and really great to hear about your views. Especially the last part is something that is very relevant because it is about finding a way out of all of this. So thank you, Aravindanji, for yet another wonderful session.
It has been a very great pleasure talking to you always, and the conversation has been illuminating. I learned things from you. Thank you so much, Bhaveshji. Namaste.
Thank you, Aravindanji. So we'll conclude the episode, the first in the series of the left and the right. And this episode we focused on cultural wokeism, and hope to see you soon. Namaste.
Namaste.